This is the Bryan Hyde Show.
Well, hello there and welcome to the show. Eric Peters joins me from Eric Peters Autos. Hey, Eric, how are you today?
Well, I'm feeling like it's Groundhog Day. Remember that movie?
Oh, too well. Yes. I jokingly, when I sent it to Eric, the link that would connect us, I said, I hope we can find something to talk about today. And, gas prices jumped about 20 cents overnight. Diesel's pushing over $4 a gallon. And I assume this is happening other places, but lay it on me. What's your take about the new adventure in the Middle East?
Well, I mean, oh boy, where to start? Let's begin with why. Why? I think that's the question on almost everybody's minds. This is a most obviously unnecessary war. It took a while for the Iraq war to be understood to have been a completely unnecessary war. Americans got gulled into that by the whole weapons of mass destruction and mushroom clouds and all that stuff. But it's gotten tiresome. It's gotten old. Fool me once, right?
Right.
And, here we are again. There was clearly no imminent crisis. There was no imminent necessary reason for this to happen. And yet it's happened. And now the Middle East is thrown into chaos. And we're already paying the war tax. I haven't looked to see what it was this morning, but the cost of a barrel of oil is now well over $70 a barrel. And we're all seeing the cost of gas rise. And it's probably going to rise a lot more. I think that the people who were responsible for this may have thought that this was going to be some kind of quick Venezuela-type decapitation operation. And as soon as they got rid of the Ayatollah, that the Iranian people were going to welcome their liberators and we could reinstall the Shah's son and all would be well, all this stuff. Apparently, the Iranians don't agree with that. And now what? It's very difficult to go from bombing a country to controlling a country. So are we going to put boots on the ground? Are we going to send Marines in to invade Iran? How long is this going to last? And are we going to be paying $10 a gallon for gas soon? This could very well prove to be the end of MAGA, and it could be prove to be the end of the world, ultimately, if this thing gets completely out of hand. I don't want to be too dramatic about it, but I think that's not a hyperbolic statement.
Someone pointed out to me yesterday, and I'm not an expert on the internal religious affairs within the Iranian nation, but to take out Khamenei the way that they did, a friend said it's like killing the Pope to those who shared his faith. So only the difference here is when the Pope is taken out, or if you were to kill the Pope, you wouldn't necessarily have millions of people who are willing to die to avenge that.
But they might be willing to die to avenge the 117 schoolgirls that were killed in one of these bombing raids that would be alive today if this thing hadn't happened. It starts to tug at people's consciences. Why are we doing this? I don't want to be complicit in this. I don't want to have anything to do with this. I don't have a dog in this fight. And speaking of the Ayatollah, and I haven't confirmed this, how could I confirm that? I'm just a guy, like you talking about this stuff. But apparently the Ayatollah said something to the effect of, the Iranian people can't hide in bunkers, and so I'm not going to do it either. And so he actually remained above ground, and he and his family, including his daughter and granddaughter, as I understand it, were killed as a result of this. And it's just outrageous. You can imagine the hue and cry of the Lee Greenwood set in this country if the Iranians had bombed the White House, let's say, and managed to kill Trump and Ivanka and Barron.
Oh, yeah. And this is one of the things that irks me. And before I say this, I have to preface it with, look, I am very concerned for American service members who joined the military in good faith, that they would be protecting and defending the American people and what we stand for. I don't want to see them in harm's way. We've already lost some. I don't know how many more are going to have to die, but the part that bothers me is so many people are framing this, we've been at war, they've been at war with us since 1979, and Iran has had it out for us since then. And they conveniently forget that there is history that precedes that revolution that brought the Ayatollahs into power in 1979. You go back another 26 years or so to 1953, and suddenly you start to realize, well, there is a bit of back history here in which the U.S. and British intelligence services went in and deposed, overthrew a democratically elected president of Iran and put the Shah in his place. And the Shah, even though he was, sympathetic and amenable to Western interests, still ran a very brutal regime with secret police, torture chambers, and prisons, and the whole 9 yards.
Yep, very much like the example of Saddam Hussein in Iraq, who was our bestest friend for a long time, and whose horrific treatment of dissidents and other people that he just didn't like in Iraq was shoved under the carpet because it was situationally convenient for the U.S. to do that. Just the same, the Shah had, as you say, the Savak, his intelligence service, and widely hated by the average Iranians because of the brutality that the Savak deployed against Iranians. But I think the fundamental point here, or the fundamental absurdity of it, it's almost like a Rabelais, I can never say the guy's name, Rabelais. It's just sort of a ridiculousness of it. Is this hysterical shrieking that Iran is some kind of existential threat to the United States? That who the heck, how does that even like register in anybody's mind that the Iranians are coming to get us? It's absurd. It's ludicrous. And I think that's why war fever this time is at a very low pitch. Everybody understands that this war is being fought in the interests of Israel, period. Israel has its own interests. It's a different state. We are not the same thing as the state of Israel. And this idea that we have to constantly jump in the line of fire to defend the interests of Israel is something I think that Americans are getting sick of.
And I don't know if you caught the comment from Secretary of State Rubio, but this is his quote. He said, "The president made the very wise decision. We knew there was going to be an Israeli action. We knew that it would precipitate an attack against American forces. And we knew that if we didn't preemptively go after them before they launched those attacks." In other words, he's admitting that this was being done because Israel was going to do it. In other words, he's admitting we are being dragged into this against our will and against our better judgment.
Sure, and why not let the Israelis go ahead and do it then?
Sure.
Let them be the aggressors. And, there would have been a chance, at least in that case, that if we'd stayed out of it, the Iranians would have looked at it and said, well, we're being attacked by Israel, so we're going to fight back against Israel, and left us out of it. Instead, we jump right into it, and as a result of that, now it's our war. Now we own this. And once again, we are turning the entire world against us because it's just so obvious that this is unnecessary and unjust. And it's imposing all sorts of awfulness all across the globe, not just monetarily in terms of things like gas prices, but just the violence of it, the fact that people are being killed again for no good reason other than the state of Israel can't stand the thought that it might not be the hegemonic power in that part of the world.
Yeah. And what's the guy's name? George Alexopoulos. He's an illustrator and cartoonist, makes some really great commentary through his work. But he made this observation. He says, a friend who pulls you into his fights is a bad friend.
Correct. Right. I mean, you remember when we were young and you'd go into a bar and there'd always be this guy with you, who always got into fights with other people. And then somehow you get dragged into it because, oh my God, he's my friend. I gotta step up and back him up. Well, after a while, you stop going to the bar with that guy.
Yeah. I've been critical of U.S. foreign policy for quite some time. But the idea that, they're attacking our service members and our bases in the Middle East. And I just have to ask, why do we have those bases in the first place? How in any way does that protect us from, whatever? It seems to me that if we were serious about protecting the American people and the American way of life, those service members would be stationed and actually probably engaged in action here on American soil against the ruling class that is doing everything it can to impoverish us and enslave us.
Of course. And what do they expect? You take sides in a fight. You become overtly involved on behalf of one side in a fight. Do you not expect to be part of the fight? That happens. We're not a disinterested neutral party. We're not Switzerland. Somehow Switzerland never seems to get attacked. It's just an interesting commentary. And you're absolutely right. And I think it's all the more infuriating because what did we vote for? Those of us who voted for Trump. Trump used to say all the time that he thought these pointless regime change operations in the Middle East were just that. That they were disastrous for America. They were bleeding us literally and also figuratively of money. And he promised us that he was going to stop doing that. And now, not only is he doing it, but he's doing it extravagantly in an over-the-top way in a war where it's obviously not, again, I'm harping on this because I think it's important, absolutely not necessary. This did not have to happen, and yet it's happening.
No, I'm with you there. there's a lot of cognitive dissonance happening right now, especially among the MAGA true believers who are, they want to be loyal to the president, and yet he ran on, he kept us out of wars. He's keeping not another Middle Eastern war, and yet here we are. It's like you referenced Groundhog Day earlier, and it feels like the same thing. I mean, what was last June when the big attack took place that wiped out Iran's nuclear capability? It's completely gone. Great. So why the attack again? Why the decapitation? Oh, that's right, because they were just weeks away from having another nuclear device or a nuclear device in the first place. I mean, we've heard, how many times have we heard that over the last 20, 30 years? 35
years. Netanyahu has been saying that they're weeks or months away. And even if they were, so what? Again, at the end of the day, does any serious person believe that the Iranians in possession of a couple of nuclear bombs are going to challenge the United States and nuke us? It's ludicrous. The only reason that Israel doesn't want Iran to have nuclear weapons is precisely so that they can continue to do what's going on right now. They want a weak adversary that they can just go in and hit anytime they decide to do it. Whereas if Iran did have the capability to hit back in a scenario like that, that would prevent the Israelis from continuing their expansion per Mike Huckabee's egregious endorsement of Greater Israel from the Nile to the Euphrates.
Yep. It's sickening to see the unnecessary loss of life. And the thing is, all the confidence with which the Trump administration and others are stating, well, this is going to be 4 or 5 days. I think I mentioned the word cakewalk to you before we went on the air. We've heard that tune before, but nobody really knows. When you unleash the dogs of war, you don't have absolute control of where and how they're going to roam. And we've had to learn this a few times. I thought, 23 years ago we would learn it, after our incursion into Iraq. Well, apparently it's been long enough that people have forgotten.
Yep. Trump is now talking about 4 or 5 weeks. They're talking about that openly. And well, what if that doesn't work? What then? Then they're going to talk about sending boots. They're going to start sending troops. American troops are going to be sent to Iran. You know how big Iran is? It's a huge country. It's something like a third the physical size of the United States. And that would take hundreds of thousands of troops to go there and occupy Iran. Is America ready for that? Is America wanting that? Are we wanting to see how many thousands of Americans be killed over there for that? And to visit death on how many, God only knows how many people in Iran? I don't think so. All the polls that I have seen uniformly say that this war is massively unpopular already. To the tune of 70% of people asked about it say, why are we here? What are we doing here? You can only imagine what that's going to be like in a couple of weeks as this thing goes on. And as we're seeing every day coffins coming back, from that part of the world, carrying some poor kid, who got dragooned into this fight, thinking he was going to be defending America. And all of a sudden he's defending something he didn't sign up to defend. It's terrible. And I think that the long-term consequences of it could be the complete destruction of MAGA and President Trump's remaining time in office. He'll become an enfeebled, lame duck president despised by everybody.
I don't know if how many people have seen, images of the president in the last day or two, but he is looking like a guy who has undergone a pretty serious beating psychologically. You can see the weariness on his face, and look, I'm not trying to just drum up sympathy for him. There are some things you and I've talked about that for which we should be grateful for Trump preventing Hillary Clinton from attaining the White House. Very grateful for that. I'm grateful for his decisive actions on the border and stopping that weaponized flow of unvetted individuals, a lot of military-age males, by the way. I wonder if that's going to come back and bite us. He's done well with that. But this is, I'm going to agree with you. I think this is an epic failure. And I have to give a nod to Karen Kwiatkowski for her piece on LouRockwell.com yesterday. She called it Epstein's Fury, which I think That may be closer to the truth because, hey, suddenly the Epstein files, oh, what about those? We're at war. We have more important things.
In my opinion, they're clearly related, not so much because of the salacious stuff, the sex stuff, but because of the blackmail stuff, which ties back to Israel. Again, that's the way you understand everything that seems inexplicable, I think, in this context. Now, with regard to Trump, I'm going to step in. I am sympathetic to him to the same degree that I was sympathetic to Biden, much as I despise the man, or his policies, I should say. I was saddened to see an 80-something-year-old man failing publicly, and more profoundly, to see a man that age failing in that office. Not a good look. Not something that is comforting to know that you've got a failing, doddering old man at the helm of the federal government. Donald Trump is an old man. I understand that, there's a lot of people say, oh, he's a very energetic guy. He's still 80 years old and he's obese. Not many obese 80-year-old men manage to stay healthy for very much longer. I think there's something to be said for putting younger men in that office, irrespective of what your political affiliation is. I think it's inherently dangerous to put a man that age in an office where it's extremely high pressure, nonstop, and expect him to be able to perform like a 50-year-old man might be able to perform.
Now, I want to take this in what I'm going to call a more productive direction, in that I think you and I have identified pretty clearly where the problem is. We haven't even touched on the whole, by the way, where's Congress on all this? I think somewhere in the Constitution, they're supposed to be the ones to declare war and not just take the president's word. He's not just going to notify him, we're going to war, and they nod thoughtfully. Let's talk about people, though, right now who are feeling black-pilled and hopeless, and maybe they're caught up in the doom scrolling. Look, I get caught up in it, too. I see something explode, and now I'm looking, and is there more, video of these explosions and whatnot? Let's talk about how do you keep yourself from wanting to walk off the ledge? And I'd be open to whatever advice you might offer as to how do you keep your sanity in a time like this?
Well, I think in the first place, to step away from the computer and step away from the phone, put the phone in the drawer for a while and find something that you have a degree of control over that gives you a sense of accomplishment. For my part right now, I'm in the middle of this transformation of my Trans Am from an automatic to manual. I've been doing it for a couple of months piecemeal. And every time I get to go out in the garage and pick up the wrenches and crawl under the car, I can concentrate on that, and I can literally get hands-on with that. It's something that's in my control, as opposed to whatever I'm watching on the TV with regard to this war. I have no control over that. There's nothing I can do about it. So to the extent that you can engage in activities that give you a return, that are productive, even if it's just reading a book and, you're increasing your knowledge of something, it's something positive, as opposed to just passively sitting there and being assaulted by, as you say, this doom scroll of terrible news coming at you from every quarter.
I believe that there's a lot of deliberate demoralization going on right now as part of this. And part of it's just to keep us, indecisive. Oh, man, what do I do? What can I do? I think back to some of the early days of the lockdowns under COVID. I had a good friend who I thought had a very productive way of addressing that. And it was simply, look, I know everybody is scared. And what he did was he put himself out there and said, if you need help, if you're afraid to go to the store, if you need milk, if you need eggs or whatever, call me. Let me help you out. Let me run errands for you. And there is something in serving other people, and I mean really selflessly serving other people. You're not expecting something in return, that shifts the focus away from the fear. And really, it gives you not only a sense of empowerment, but you can understand that, look, good things are still happening in this world. And it's even better when you recognize that I can be a source for some of those good things that are taking place.
Excellent suggestion. I wish I'd done that during COVID myself. I wish I'd thought of that. But yeah, you make a very, very excellent point. And I guess now, to the extent that you can, it's a good idea to just connect with your friends and people that you know and talk to them about things that are happy and good, as opposed to all the things that are negative and terrible.
Yep. It's the easiest thing in the world to latch on to the negativity, because right now it's pretty much everywhere. But a small source of light, you'd be surprised at how it attracts more light. And, this is not Pollyanna kind of thinking. This is just a recognition that we have a choice as to what we give our attention to. I want to stay informed. So yes, probably about 5 to 10% of my attention is spent, seeing, how bad it is. But there's a whole 90% of my life that can be centered around, people and things that are actually decent and uplifting and worthwhile. And the more I focus on that, the better.
Yep. And let's not get goaded into hating people just because we've been told to hate them. People were being encouraged to hate people who didn't wear masks and practice social distancing and all of that. And now we're being encouraged to hate the Iranians. Let's just stop it with all that.
I agree. It's, in fact, I had to kind of put my foot down a few days ago, talking with a friend who was just wanting to, Trump is this evil person, and Trump did this and Trump did that, and I was just like, look, I have zero obligation to start to hate someone who has not personally wronged me. And frankly, even if someone has personally wronged me, I don't think that hate is the productive way to go about addressing things. I think part of becoming an adult is learning how to get past that and to release yourself, from that kind of a burden. Nonetheless, I will not allow myself to be drafted into somebody else's hate crusade based on, well, you're not a good person if you don't think this way. You're going to see more of this, particularly toward the Iranians and who knows who else. So be aware of it and don't give people that kind of control over your thinking and your feelings.
Amen.
Eric, let's end on a very positive note. You mentioned your car project. I know that you have been posting regular updates. Bring us up to speed on where is the Trans Am as we speak?
Well, the Death Star is almost operational. I got this was like the prize find for me. I found on eBay a set of NOS, which means new old stock, original GM in the box from 50 years ago. This is just a little technical arcana, the rods that control the shifter. When you shift a manual transmission in an old car, you're operating these levers and rods. And I needed to get those for the transmission, plus the factory correct chromed Hurst shift knob and the factory Pontiac gear selector. I think I sent you a picture of them.
You did. Oh, it's something to see.
Yep. And so these are not reproductions. Now, if you're a persnickety old car guy like I am, it's just like ecstatic to find the original stuff from back in the day, as opposed to some cheap Chinese made knockoff. This is correct factory stuff. Anyway, once I get a couple of other small parts, I'm going to put the linkage on the transmission and get it all hooked up, and then I can put it in the car. And once that's done, I should be able to get it operational within the next week or so, depending on how my time schedule fits.
Okay, ericpetersautos.com. If you haven't been there before, you need to go check this out. And Eric has a lot of other great commentary and other articles that anything automotive, I guarantee you'll find some interesting thought there. Eric, thanks so much for weighing in this morning. I feel better just for having talked with you. I know it seems very gloomy and like there's a lot of doom waiting for us around the corner, but I think we have more at our disposal than we give ourselves credit for.
We got through COVID. We'll get through this too.
Hear, hear. All right. Thanks so much for joining me. We will we'll pick it up here next week. See what things are like then.
Okay.
This is the Bryan Hyde Show.